Welcome to the Black Archives of Mid-America in Kansas City. This beautiful facility used to be the park's maintenance building. They kept the horses here. When Emanuel Cleaver got this building to be the Black Archives, the first thing he did was have them shovel out several feet of dirt to make sure that all the horse manure got outside. When I took this job a little over 2 years ago, they said, "We should warn you that sometimes the building stinks." And I said, I'm not working in a stinky building. Ended up being P-trap problem. So it's now a beautiful facility. It's clean, it smells wonderful. We have disinfected it for COVID several times. So wear your mask and stay socially distanced and come visit the Black Archives. This room is the Ewing, Marion Kaufman Exhibition Hall. When Cleaver got this building for us, it took $5 million to renovate it, and the Kaufman Foundation gave $1 million. So we named this room, this exhibit hall, after them because they've certainly deserved it. Crosby Kemper was responsible for raising another $1 million. The city put in $2.5 million, and private donors put in the rest. So coming to the exhibition hall. This is the fixed exhibit. The name of it is "With My Eyes No Longer Blind," and it was taken from a Langston Hughes poem. And it's certainly appropriate for this exhibit. It says, "I look at the world with awakening eyes in a black face." And this is what I see. This fenced off narrow space assigned to me. I look then at the silly walls through dark eyes and a dark face. And this is what I know, that all these walls oppression builds will have to go. I look at my own body with eyes no longer blind, and I see that my own hands can make the world that's in my mind. Then let us hurry, comrade, the road to find. Langston Hughes. This exhibit consists of people in this area who have worked and dedicated their lives to building Black Kansas City. Our founder is Horace Peterson II, and Horace started out as a teenager collecting buttons and brochures and storing them in the trunk of his car. The first exhibit archive was at the Paseo YMCA on 18th and Paseo. When that building was inhabitable for a while, he rented an apartment. And after the apartment, with desegregation of the fire stations, he was able to house the archives at 2033 Vine. Mr. Peterson didn't live to see the archives in this building, but I'm told by his friends and people who know him that he would be very happy with this building. Ruby Arnold, Congressman Cleaver has told me when he was mayor, sat outside his office every day. And he would say, "Ruby, you have to make an appointment like everybody else. I'm too busy to talk to you." And then one day she blocked the door and said, "If you don't get us that building before you leave office, we're not going to have it." And he knew she was right. So he secured this building and the funding. And there's Ruby in front of the archives. And there's an award that we received for the remodeling of this building. So thank you, Ruby Arnold. The exhibit is actually spaced almost thematically, but not quite. We have politicians, Bruce R. Watkins, who was the first Black man to run for mayor of Kansas City. He didn't win, but he ran. And I remember the day after the election, him being interviewed on TV saying, "Had I been white, I could have gone to bed at 6 o'clock. But he knew the truth, and the reality was when people went to the voting booth, they just could not vote for that Black man. Lucille Bluford is important, not just for her role at the Kansas City Call, but also she applied to the University of Missouri Journalism School and was accepted. And when she showed up, they said, "Oh, we didn't know she was a Negro. Did you know she was a Negro?" I'm like, "No, we didn't know." So they said, "Oh, we're sorry, we don't accept Negroes here." So she filed suit in court, and the court said, "Indeed, they do not have to accept you, but they have to build you a separate but equal journalism school. So the University of Missouri decided that it would be cheaper to send her to the University of Kansas, where she got her degree. Same thing with Roy Wilkins, was here at the call, but he went on to national fame as a community and civil rights worker. Musicians, athletes, and I told Congressman Cleaver, that I told a group of middle schoolers that Emanuel Cleaver was young once, and he did not laugh. But he's certainly significant to the political aspect of this city. Julius Groves came to this area with 60 cents in his pocket. He went to work sharecropping for a potato farmer, learned how to do it, bought a patch of land, started growing his own, and he ended up being the potato king. In 1900, the turn of the century, he had a mansion with running hot and cold water and lights and a telephone. Some of his descendants still live in this area. They were here for a family reunion 2 years ago. The Quindaro ruins have come to prominence when people like Marvin Robinson and Nedra Bonds and others went to work to save it from being a landfill. And there's Nancy Quindaro Brown. Sarah Rector at one point was the richest Black woman in the United States. Her house still is at 12th Street and is now the St. Mark's Early Learning Center. We are the only museum, I'm willing to bet, that has a grandmother and a granddaughter enshrined in the museum. Her granddaughter, Sarah Campbell, played women's professional basketball, and she's over in the other exhibit. Leona Pouncey Thurman was the first Black woman to practice law. We have all of those people who went to politically, socially, legally, and medically build this city. We understand that healthcare disparities that we're still talking about in 2021 existed at the turn of the century. Dr. Perry was discouraged with the inequity that he saw in the care of Black and white patients, so he turned his home into a sanitarium. Florence Crittenton Home served young families. Dr. Perry and others went to the city and said, we need a hospital for Black patients. And they did not ask to be integrated. They just asked for the facility. And the city said, oh, okay, so they built a new general hospital. Well, then the old one becomes General Hospital number 2 for the Black patients, and the brand new sparkly one is General Hospital number 1 for the white patients. The buildings were connected by an underground tunnel. And I heard a wonderful story about a Black woman who was close friends with a white woman, and she wanted to go see her friend who was hospitalized. So they took her down in the tunnel and then brought her friend down to meet her there. Melvin Tolson, Dr. Robert Farnsworth has done a lot of work on Melvin Tolson, and we know him from The Debaters, a recent movie. But all of these people were here in Kansas City building this wonderful place. And barbecue, of course, is Kansas City's claim to fame. So we have Arthur Bryant, who was the best known barbecue person. Calvin Trillin pronounced it the single best restaurant in the world. But we also know that he was taught by other people. And that tradition of Kansas City barbecue lasts and today. And Harold Holliday Sr., who was a champion for the working class. There are many, many, many people chronicled in this exhibit, including Buck O'Neill and the Negro Leagues baseball players. And also, when we have young people come here on field trips, I like to show them how people dressed up to go to baseball games on Sunday. They would leave church in their Sunday finest and head out to the ball stadium. I also tell them the black folks played golf before Tiger Woods. The Black Archives is currently working on developing a documentary about the desegregation of golf courses, of public golf courses, because we know that many decisions that affect the lives, the livelihoods, and the economies, the health, etc., of people of color were made on the golf course. So that's systemic racism when we are excluded from participating in that decision-making process. Horace Peterson and his friend Tillman Stewart learned that there was a cabin where an enslaved woman had lived in Trenton, Missouri. So they contacted the family that said, yes, you can have it. And they and some of their friends went up, dismantled the cabin, and brought it down to Kansas City. They reconstructed it at 2033 Vine in the old firehouse. And then when the archives moved to this building, they put it here. So this is Lucy's cabin. We have other pictures that we're going to add to this exhibit of her family. And we also found her wash basin. So this will truly be representative of Lucy's house. Black Archives has partnered with the Equal Justice Initiative, Community Remembrance Project. It's the Lynching Project. They opened a new museum in Montgomery, Alabama 2 years ago, and we are the Missouri site for this. And what they do is recognize where people were victims of racial murder in this area, in this state. And we know all of their stories. We know their names, we know where and when they were murdered. And we also know what was going on. Levi Harrington was lynched right here in Kansas City in the West Bluffs. And recently, after the installation of his monument on the West Bluffs, the police have film of 6 white men cutting it off a steel post and throwing that monument over the hill. And the Parks Department retrieved it, and it was in storage. And then we decided that it belonged here in this lynching project. They cleaned it up for us, which I wish they had kind of left it the way it was, because it's important, I think, for us to see the realities of what racial hatred does. This mural was done by Charles Swavey. Charles Jones, who's a student at the Art Institute of Kansas City. He came in and he had a portfolio of his artwork, and many of the pictures were of lynchings. And I said, Charlie, you're 20 years old. Why are you doing pictures of lynchings? So we talked about those grotesque carnivals that were lynchings. And the railroads would have discount fares. Hotels would have discount fares. People would come from miles and miles and miles around to attend these lynchings. So it doesn't take long to kill somebody when you hang them by the neck until dead. So they would have carnival games. And if you won the game, then you would be able to cut a piece off the body. So people would cut off ears and nose and fingers. And if you were the big winner, then you got to cut off the scrotum. In addition, what was more intrinsic about this in race relations is that whole families would come, and people would often have their children on their shoulders watching this lynching. So if you're the little kid and you're on your daddy's shoulders and he's happy, your mom's happy, your grandparents are laughing, friends and family, and everybody's dressed up and having fun and eating food and playing games, you don't recognize that this is horrific. So it takes time and it takes education for those children to learn that what they were witnessing was murder, and that it can't be tolerated any longer. When I got here, this beauty was on top of the shelves in the archive room, and I fell in love with her. And our videographer, Stinson McClendon, was here, and I brought him in here and said, I love her. And he said, that's my brother's work. His brother is Ty McClendon, who lives in California now. And what is so amazing about her is there's just one pole to hold her, and the rest is the wire. It's just the construction of the wire into the art. The name of her is Breast of the World because she has plenty of them, but I also think she's a beautiful symbol of Black womanhood. It's Tim McClendon. Ty McClendon is the artist. This is our new exhibit, which is Valor.
Oh, okay.
And Taylor Jackson is our adjunct curator. And this is our temporary exhibit hall. So we rotate the exhibits in here about once every 6 weeks. So Valor looks at fighting Black folks from Africa, female and male, to the current day. So these are the uniforms of actual service people. Commander Philpott was the commander at Leavenworth, and he was responsible for getting the Buffalo Soldiers Monument erected and also to honor the 6888, the group of Black women, service women who were responsible for moving 17 million pieces of mail in 3 months. They got finally that backlog of years of mail to fighting men in the fields. And also there are women acknowledged in this exhibit. And this is the table for the POW MIA soldiers. And the military folk came and set this up. It has a certain requirements for it. So this is the Women's Basketball Association Hall of Fame. Women's professional basketball started in Kansas City, Missouri, by a guy named Lightning Mitchell. There's the letter from the NBA saying, "Oh, what a great idea. Let us know how this goes." Well, a woman who worked for Lightning and this league went to work at the NBA. So the next thing you know, there's a WNBA. So he showed up one day, I didn't know him, and said, "I just want these women to be recognized." So we set up this whole thing. Sarah Rector, I said there was a grandmother and granddaughter. This is her granddaughter, Sarah Campbell. So I think we may be the only magazine, the only museum that has a grandmother and granddaughter. And we had a soft opening of this exhibit last year at Black History Month, and a lot of the players came from around the country and signed the basketball.